Findings in the latest climate bulletin published by the Copernicus Climate Change Service C3S confirm November 2025 as the third warmest November globally. With just 1 month left in the calendar year, this means 2025 will finish as the second or third warmest year on record after 2024, potentially tied with 2023, currently the second warmest year. It also sets the global 3-year average temperature for 2023 to 2025 on track to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels for the first time in the instrumental period, according to the ERA5 dataset. Global average surface air temperature anomalies relative to 1991 to 2020 for each November all months, and running 12-month averages from 1979 to 2025. Use the gray and yellow toggles to change the temporal sampling. Data source ERA5. Credit C3S ECMWF. For November, global temperatures were 1.54 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, and the 3-year average for 2023 to 2025 is on track to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time. These milestones are not abstract. They reflect the accelerating pace of climate change, and the only way to mitigate future rising temperatures is to rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Samantha Burgess, Strategic Lead for Climate, ECMWF. Third warmest November on record globally. November 2025 saw an average surface air temperature of 14.02 degrees Celsius, 0.65 degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average for the month. It was 0.20 degrees Celsius cooler than November 2023, the warmest November on record, and 0.08 degrees Celsius cooler than November 2024, the second warmest. Globally, November 2025 was 1.54 degrees Celsius warmer than the estimated 1,850 to 1,900 pre-industrial average, making it the 28th month in the entire ERA5 dataset to surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius, and the second month since April 2025 to do so after October. From January to November, the global average temperature anomaly was 0.6 thousand degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average, equivalent to 1.48 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial baseline, identical to 2023. Over Europe, the average temperature was 5.74 degrees Celsius, 1.38 degrees Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average for November, making it the fifth warmest November in the European record. The most pronounced above-average temperatures were observed over Eastern Europe, Russia, the Balkans, and Turkey. In contrast, below-average temperatures were mainly seen over northern Sweden and Finland, Iceland, and parts of northern Italy and southern Germany. European mean surface air temperature anomalies relative to 1991 to 2020 averaged over European land for each November, all months, and running 12-month averages from 1979 to 2025. Use the gray and yellow toggles to change the temporal sampling. Data source ERA5, credit C3S ECMWF. Outside Europe, temperatures were most above average over the polar regions. This includes northeastern Canada and the Canadian archipelago, much of the United States, the Arctic Ocean, and East Antarctica. Boreal autumn ranks third warmest. The 2025 boreal autumn season, September-November, was the third warmest on record globally, cooler only than the autumns of 2023 and 2024. Temperatures were mostly above average across the world, with particularly strong positive anomalies over northern Canada, the Arctic Ocean, and Antarctica. Surface air temperature anomaly for the boreal autumn from September to November 2025 relative to the average for 1991 to 2020. Data source ERA5. Credit Copernicus Climate Change Service, ECMWF. Read the November 2025 surface air temperature update in full. Europe sees heavy rainfall and drought conditions. Across Europe in November, wetter than average conditions impacted the UK, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, northwestern Russia, and much of the Balkans, with Albania and Greece experiencing particularly heavy rainfall. Storm Claudia brought heavy rain and flooding to northwestern Spain and Portugal between 12 and 15 November, before extending to Ireland, Wales, and England on 14 to 15 November, where it also caused local flooding. In contrast, drier than average conditions were recorded in Iceland, southern Spain, northern Italy, central Germany, and Sweden. Drought warnings persisted across southeastern Europe, especially in southwestern Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey. Anomalies in precipitation, the relative humidity of surface air, the volumetric moisture content of the top 7 centimeters of soil and surface air temperature for November 2025 with respect to November averages for the period 1991 to 2020. The darker gray shading denotes where soil moisture is not shown due to ice cover or climatologically low precipitation. Data source ERA5 and ERA5 land. Credit C3SECMWF. Beyond Europe, the bulletin reports wetter than average conditions in the southwest United States, parts of northern Canada, northwestern Russia, Taiwan, southern Africa, Madagascar, and along coastal regions of Australia. South and Southeast Asia experienced extreme rainfall and flooding resulting from a combination of tropical cyclones and heavy monsoon rains. In contrast, much of Western and Central Asia saw drier than average conditions in November, in addition to northern Mexico, the southeastern United States, and southern Brazil. Read the November 2025 hydrological variables update in full. Slow growth of Arctic sea ice extent. Growth of the Arctic sea ice cover has been slower than average since the last week of October, leading to the second lowest monthly extent for November, 12% below the 1991 to 2020 average. On 30 November, the daily extent ranked lowest for that date at 9.74 million km2. Left, average Antarctic sea ice concentration for November 2025. The white line denotes the climatological ice edge for November for the period 1991 to 2020. Right, Antarctic sea ice concentration anomaly for November 2025 relative to the November average for the period 1991 to 2020. Data source ERA5, credit C3S CCMWF. Regionally, sea ice concentrations were much below average in the Western Eurasian sector, particularly around Svalbard, Franz Josef Land, and the Kara Sea, as well as in the northeastern Canadian sector. These low concentrations coincided with much above average surface air temperatures, pointing to the link between warm anomalies and reduced ice cover. In the Antarctic, the monthly sea ice extent for November 2025 was 7% below the 1991 to 2020 average, ranking it as the fourth lowest November extent on record. Sea ice concentrations around Antarctica were most below average in the Bellingshausen Sea and the Indian Ocean sector. Read the November 2025 sea ice update in full. Surface air temperature. This series of monthly maps and charts generated from ERA5 data covers global and European surface air temperatures. Sea ice. We produce sea ice maps every month. Based on ERA5 reanalysis data, these provide near real-time monitoring of the polar ice caps. Hydrological variables. This series of monthly maps and charts, based on ERA5 data, covers several variables: precipitation, humidity, and soil moisture for Europe and the extratropical regions. Every month, the Copernicus Climate Change Service, C3S, which is implemented by the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts, ECMWF, on behalf of the European Commission, provides an update on temperatures, hydrological variables, and sea ice, highlighting recent climate conditions. The climate bulletins include charts and maps with the evolution of key climate variables, based mainly on the C3S reanalysis dataset ERA5. Global average surface air temperature anomalies relative to 1991 to 2020 for each November, all months, and running 12-month averages from 1979 to 2025. Use the gray and yellow toggles to change the temporal sampling. Data source, ERA5. Credit C3S ECMWF. Window to add Devent listener. Message function A if void 0 equal to toa. Data wrapper height var equal to document. Query selector all iframe for Vartna data wrapper height for var r equal to 0. Rickwell toe plus plus up content window equal to a source. ER equal to a data wrapper height T plus PXR style that height equal to global average surface air temperature anomalies relative to the 1,850 to 1,900 pre-industrial reference period for each November, all months, and running 12-month averages from 1979 to 2025. Use the gray and yellow toggles to change the temporal sampling. Data source, ERA 5, credit C3S ECMWF. According to the ERA 5 dataset, globally November 2025 was warmer than the 9 degrees Celsius, warmer than the 1991 to 2020 average for November, with an absolute surface air temperature of 14.02 degrees Celsius. The third warmest November on record, 0.2 thousand degrees Celsius cooler than the record November of 2023, and only 0.08 degrees Celsius cooler than November 2024. 0.54 degrees Celsius warmer than an estimate of the pre-industrial November average for 1850 to 1900. October and November 2025 end a short 5-month period that were less than 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. November is thus the 28th month in the ERA 5 data record over